Hey Orcs, this is Asbalk, and I'm going to talk to you guys about an awesome deck I created. I call it My Lock because it's just what I created. It's not a big deal. This is an interesting deck about how to beat any deck, really. And the way you do it is it's a control Warlock, if you want to think about it like that. And what I noticed, how this deck evolved, was I was trying to make Lakara Sacrifice, the Warlock quest, work right here. And you know what I noticed? It didn't really work. I couldn't get out the quest. To really make this quest work, you got to get it out by turn 6. It's just not very strong compared to other quests. I was telling another friend on my list here that to make this quest really good, you're going to need to, they would have to have summon basically 2 imps right away. So you could attack with them right away. It's because most minions, you know, like the priest quest, you get an 8/8 minion with taunt. You know, so a lot of the other minions, or you get 8/8 minions like right away with board presence. With this one, it's not. You only get 3/2 minions. It's very difficult when you discard the cards. You're not able to really predict it. There's a lot of RNG that gets, and you're like, frick, I just discarded Jarraxus or something, right? Or you discarded some card that you needed to survive. And so while it's a pretty cool idea, and it doesn't really work. It's just not very good compared to a lot of the other the zoo decks like Zoo, Murloc, and so forth. But I love playing an orc because I am an orc, and this deck still has Deathwing in it. So I try to use Deathwing's discard mechanic here, where you destroy all. You have 7 cards in your hand by life tapping. Then by turn 10, you play Deathwing. You basically draw for Deathwing. You'd get it, but you have a lot of control mechanisms, and then you could play Lakara Sacrifice. But what I found is it's not really viable because by turn 10 you're getting smoked by aggro, and to really play the quest, unless you don't want to play like the normal traditional discard quest, so I only have 1 card in my deck which I can discard 7 of my other cards and win. This is sort of the deck that I kind of created that could do that, because you have a lot of early game board removal, and then by turn 10 you could do it. But what I found is with Lakara Sacrifice is that the problem is you got to mulligan that card a lot, like a vast majority of the time, unless you're playing against like a priest, and even then they can beat you. But this deck, so I removed Lakara Sacrifice and I added a lot of control, I want to say board removal control elements, and how the win condition of this deck is Lord Jarraxus. So you can't mull it. Lord Jarraxus is the main reason why you win this deck. So how will you lose this deck to this? You can lose to, of course, hyper aggro decks, which is pretty normal for like most decks to lose to another aggro deck, unless you have some type of board clear mechanic or some way to destroy all minions that are less than, you know, X attack power. You know, but the thing is that Lord Jarraxus is the attrition thing. You know, you can't really compete with him because he'll play his hero power and he summons a 6/6 minion. So against almost any deck, I'm thinking maybe even against, the problem is against Jade Druids. But here's the thing: is you have so many board removals, and with this deck, that it makes you very powerful. And let's just walk through the deck. This deck is really unique. The thing that's really awesome about this deck, besides it just being unique and not really meta, is that it can go toe-to-toe with any deck. But if you, again, with most high cost cards, if you draw them early, you know, you're going to have a problem. So here's the thing. Basically, a lot of our early game is about, again, board control, mitigating damage. We use Mistress of Mixtures as an anti-aggro card, because we don't care if we give our opponent HP in the early part of the game, but we want to life tap as much as possible. So we're life tapping at least, try to get it twice, and we have 1 Mistress of Mixtures out, and that way we can do this. Another thing I want to say before I continue, this deck, it's a very high skilled deck. A lot of decks, like the mid-range hunter decks, Murloc zoo decks, you're going to win by like turn 8, you know, just by abusing the mana mechanic in this game. And if you don't, the thing about this deck is you have to play perfectly, really. You have to play very consciously. This deck has a lot of unique combos, and it's because of that uniqueness. It takes a lot of practice to play well with this deck, but once you start to master it, it is sweet. You can literally beat anyone. Another reason why this deck works real well is that you have a huge HP pool that you can use. A ton of HP pools and a ton of board clears, and it's really powerful. And there's a few other things that we could talk about improving this deck if you have the cards. The next thing we have is just some cheap Voidwalkers. Like I think in this game in general, the most one-drop cards that are like standard for the class are just by and far really good for that class. So the Voidwalker is just really good as like if you're going first and you play this card, then the next turn you can life tap. But this deck is sort of counterintuitive because we want to keep cards in our hand to build up some of our other minions like the Mountain Giants and the 4-drop Twilight Drakes, because they're really powerful. They synergize with having a ton of cards in your hand, because sometimes you'll have like 9 cards in your hand. Acidic Swamp Ooze is just a must, I think, for almost any deck. A lot of mages and a lot of priests, even a lot of people are running Medivh. Medivh is really powerful because it creates a lot of combo energy, and they usually want to play him, I think, on turn 7 or 8. I think it's an 8-cost card, but he's a 7/7 minion. But you play this, you just keep this in your hand. It's also good against Pirate Warriors. It's good against Paladins. There's so many people that use weapons, so pretty much a lot of casters use Medivh's weapons. And since you're going to draw a ton of your deck. This is the reality: is you're pretty much going to go through your entire deck in this game, because you're going to be life tapping like crazy because you have so much HP from this. Blood Bloom is a really powerful spell, and it's very powerful. It combos incredibly well in early game with Violet Illusionist. The problem is, like most board clears, they don't come around till turn 5. In certain aggro decks, they can really, if you miss your draws and so forth. So what you do is Blood Bloom cost HP, but when you have Violet Illusionist out, you're totally immune to all damage. Violet Illusionist is an extremely powerful card for Warlocks. It's probably the most powerful card in this whole. It's one of the more powerful pieces to this puzzle. Also, when you're playing Jarraxus with the Violet Illusionist, you don't take any damage from attacking a minion. So, and you have a ton of durability on your weapon. Smart players will play with the Ooze and then use the Ooze on Jarraxus, because they'll figure like, oh, this Warlock is going to be able to do something. Corrupting Mist is a card that could be replaced, but a turn 2 board removal is really awesome. There's not a lot of board removals on turn 2s, and what's really awesome is that, like, say you combo it with Voidwalker or another taunt minion like Stonehill Defender, and with Stonehill Defender I can draw another taunt minion, so I'm just slowing my opponent down. I cast Corrupting Mist, and then I play a taunt minion like Voidwalker. Well, there's a turn 3, if you want to think about it, board clear, because my opponent has to attack this thing. So yes, the minions that he is playing is really getting ahead. Another really powerful board clear is the Doomsayer. Let me just go back to Corrupting Mist real quick. Corrupting Mist is a card that could be replaced, but what I found is when I had it, I want board clears, because the win condition in this deck is Jarraxus. So by whatever means I get there, the most powerful card my opponent plays gets dunked. The only counter to this is if a minion gets silenced, or a shaman evolves the minion, then you won't be able to, the Corrupting Mist will go away. So the minion has to change, but 95+% of the time, Corrupting Mist is going to hit. Even on, I'm serious, like say you're running your opponent down at the very end of the game, like you're deep in the turns, like turn 10, you could like you tap, you hit a Voidwalker, oh, I have Corrupting Mist in my hand, I Corrupting Mist Voidwalker, and I just killed like a 10/10 minion, because he has no way to get through it, because he's drawing one card at a time or something like that. Doomsayer sort of works the same way, but it establishes board presence. So it allows you, it pairs off really great on turn 8, because if you can draw it around play that's on turn 8, because on Jarraxus is turn 9. So you reset your HP pool, and what happens is after you reset your HP pool, you have the Doomsayer out, and you have an empty board, so you're not really threatened by anything. So we're going to talk about all the pros and cons. Chittering Tunneler is I found it to be a really powerful spell. Again, it's a discover mechanic, but you're like, man, this does damage to me. And it's not a demon, so I can't really do anything awesome with it. But how it pairs up is around turn 6. So this deck curves incredibly well around turn 5 plus. And you have ways to stop the opponent. You have to have board clears like these Blood Bloom, Twisting Nether, or something like that. You can try to clear earlier than if you need to. And because most aggro decks, when the board gets cleared, like, they're pretty much screwed. That's the thing you have to realize, is that if you can board clear them once, most of the time aggro is going to get screwed. And with hunters, it's a little different because they can go a little bit deeper. But if you start slowing them down with taunts, and we're in turn 10, like, there's no way they can beat you, especially if you start drawing really well with, like, Doomsayer. So Chittering Tunneler can give you just awesome spells. Typically, it gives you Siphon Life. And so what you're doing is your Violet Illusion, Chittering Tunneler, and I want to have just powerful board remover. So I'm searching for Jarraxus. And that's what I'm doing. Shadow Flame is a really powerful board remover. I'm trying to think of cards I was trying around. You could try Hellfire. It's another 4 damage card. It does 3 damage to all characters. The problem is say you have Vile Illusion is out and you're trying to do damage to the character. Oh, you know what I replaced it with? So you could have 2 Shadow Flames. That's no problem. Shadow Flame is, again, a situational card. It works very, very well. And that's why you could probably alternate instead of the Twilight Drake, which I want HP, so I want HP board presence. You could actually swap it for the attack. Typically, you want the HP pool to have a minion go at someone a few more times, because I've literally had most of the time the Twilight's coming out at turn 4, and you might have 8 or 9 cards in your hand from life tapping so many times. The other dragon you could go with, if you wanted to, is the Midnight Drake, and that would pair very well with Shadow Flame. The problem with Shadow Flame is it's really sort of a card that's, again, that used to be sort of a discard thing, but it's really unique. You'll see in a game where I play against a mage, if I put it up here, at the end of the game, he put a bunch of minions down, but by the time Jarraxus is out, you're just overwhelming your opponent most of the time, because you've played Jarraxus strategically to where you can overwhelm your opponent. So Twilight Drake, if you use Shadow Flame, it just does 4 damage, and so it's not fantastic, but it can have a ton of HP, and that's the whole point. Again, it's just a minion just to slow my opponent down, and it's just a great 4-drop in general. But it doesn't synergize really well with anything in this deck, but the reason why it's the synergy it does bring is the cards in your... So Fell Potion is another awesome board clear. Instead, it's as powerful as a Dragonfire Potion. It's a really powerful spell that works again. You'll be immune to the damage if you have Violet Illusionist out. The Violet Illusionist will die, but your Fellfire Potion will hit everything. And so, again, it's another board clear that you have. It doesn't work fantastic. Again, if you play it strategically, if you're like, to get board presence, say you're at like 15 HP, you're fighting not a mage, well then you might be able to get ahead again against aggro decks. Boom, like you set the board. So I want to try to fight off these aggro decks as best I can. This deck actually works decently well against aggro decks, a lot better than you think, and it can beat control decks. That's the power of this deck. Bane of Doom is an awesome card, and actually because it pulls out a random demon, and a lot of the time it pulls out really awesome demons. I don't know, sometimes a random mechanic is weird. I've seen it pull out everything, but sometimes at a 5-drop this thing will pull out Illithid. So let's see, I don't have him crafted. It'll pull out Illithid Storm Rage, which is awesome. So whenever I play a card, it's just a 6-drop. It's probably not, I don't know how good of a 6-drop this is. It's pretty decent. It just has 5 HP, but whenever I play a card, it doesn't. So we do have other, lower cards here to play, and I've been able to get like 2 I've been able to hit that, Bane of Doom, then play 2 other cards, because you see I do have other lower cards in here. that will actually play, and so I can start the Zerg the War just by casting Bane of Doom. It's Bane of Doom is really powerful because it summons just a random demon, but most demons are pretty good. Let's take a look here. What else we got? I skipped over. No, I didn't. Just making sure. Siphon Soul is just a must. It gives you 3 HP, so it helps you survive. But also, again, with board clearing, if you have a godlike minion, well, and again, the same on the mana as the Fellfire Potion, around turn 6, I'm board removing you. And then we have Twisting Nether, which is really powerful, especially with Lord Jarraxus. So, say I play Lord Jarraxus and I have Twisting Nether in my hand, they'll play some minion to try to destroy me, right? To try to counter me in some way. And it doesn't really work for whatever reason. Who knows why? It just doesn't work. And then what you do is you use Twisting Nether. Now with Deathwing, one weakness, Deathwing is, so let's finish. I've tried to skip around, I'm sorry. Alexstrasza is a must for pretty much a lot of Warlock decks. Unfortunately, without Reno Jackson, and you have to be very patient with this. You never really want to use this on the enemy, because remember that this deck is really a deck of attrition. You're really trying to use this with Lord Jarraxus, especially when he has only 15 HP. It's not very good. So you have to, your opponent can do, it's hard to do 50, it's kind of difficult to do 50, with all the board control stuff we have, it's going to be difficult for them to do 15 damage to you in one turn. It's not impossible, especially with a mage with like Pyroblast and like Pediv's Weapon. If you don't have the Acidic Swamp Ooze, I'm saying like there's always a factor of luck in this, but Alexstrasza is just really powerful. You need it to, again, it's 15 more damage your opponent has to weed through, and the more strategic you are about it, like we see with this shaman, like he misses his draw a little bit in this game, and I'm able to Alexstrasza up to 15 HP. And the problem with Alexstrasza, it costs 9 mana to use, so it does give me a lot of HP. I have used it on my opponent. I wouldn't recommend it. You don't need to. The whole point, you have to be strategic as possible. Because the problem is when you play something with 9 mana, you don't have a lot of 1-drops to follow it up with. Like, yes, if I do have Voidwalk or Mistress of Mixtures, I can play that, as an additional 1-drop, because I've gotten I've gotten those other, my heavy hitting cards like the Drake or the Mountain Giants out by then. Lord Jarraxus is the cornerstone of this deck, and it's really the win condition of the deck. I just noticed that a lot of people can't handle it. It's just the 6/6 minions plus all the board clear stuff. It's very difficult for someone to keep up. There was a druid I fought that actually outvalued me. He had a bunch of like those beasts that like charge that like nobody ever has, but his deck was way too top heavy intensive. So he would just it probably had like a 40% win chance or lower because of all the aggro that would just destroy, just weed right through his deck, I'm sure. Deathwing is a card that's left over from Lakara Sacrifice, the idea behind Lakara Sacrifice, okay? But it's the last card that you have in your hand. That the last thing, for whatever reason, you're having issues, the opponent plays some crazy thing at the end, or the shaman evolves one last time, and you probably by the time you do this, you'd have like a few cards in your hand. Then you could play Deathwing. If you wanted to, you could actually replace this with Yazara, because Yazara is just really powerful because it gives you a bunch of cards that spin off of it, especially at the end of your turn, especially another 5 damage board clear. Well, this is a way to do one final board clear if you want to. This is an optional card, in my opinion. I think back to a lot of the games. I don't play this card very much, but I do have it in my hand just in case. I'm playing against some really crazy deck. Like somebody has like a really crazy deck, or they're to get me. And say if I don't have, the problem is too is you'll discard Jarraxus if you play it. So the reality is it's not fantastic. Okay, it's not. This dragon is okay. The problem is you discard all your cards in your hand, and a lot of the cards in the game that you're going to put in your deck are pretty good. The only reason why you would do it is say you had like Chittling Tunneler and you just miss some of the combo elements. So Chittling Tunneler can be a dead card, but when you start comboing things together, it's like very difficult to beat this deck. Doom is a really powerful spell, okay? So one way you can kind of win, again, is you play Vile Illusionist, Blood Bloom, which is a really powerful spell, and then Doom. But they're really expensive. They're epics. They're 400 mana. Blood Bloom is, I think, 400 mana. So this deck is not for the cheap. This is a very expensive deck for many reasons. But it's because we tried to build a pretty awesome deck, and it is a pretty cool deck. Mountain Giant is an awesome card. And I just put this in here because I thought to myself, man, I have a lot of cards in my hand most of these games. Why don't I put Mountain Giant in here and see what happens? And you'd be surprised, Mountain Giant is more or less cannon fodder. You can win. I've won one game by using Mountain Giant, but the reality is it's not that powerful of a card. It's just really cannon fodder, but it pairs very well with Shadow Flame. So you could play it late game. You might draw it late game, but I've been able to play Mountain Giant by like turn 4 or 5 most of the time. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty unique, and by playing a minion that's an 8/8 minion as a 5-drop on turn 4. It's pretty powerful. And it's rare, turn 4 or 5. That's when you can play Mountain Giant, and you can play them back to back. I mean, it's pretty. You'll play them one turn, the next turn, and then you have a taunt in front of it. You know, you have a Void Walker in front of it. You can see where this deck can get kind of out of hand, and you sort of reverse. Again, you're tempo controlling until your win condition, which is Lord Jarraxus. Hopefully I explained this deck. This is a very interesting deck. It has certain elements in it that make it really interesting. You know, we do have a lot of spells in this deck, and we could probably add those couple other giants in there, the arcane giants maybe, because we do have quite a few spells. I'm just looking at this deck. But Stonehill Defender is just, I don't know if I talked about it, it's just one of the most powerful cards in the game. You're able to get a taunt minion, so it's great for curve. So it's like I throw a minion in front of your face and you like have to go through it most of the time. This deck can beat any deck, but that's pretty much it's a decent deck. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting to play. There's certain elements that could be changed in this deck, but this deck can beat anyone. A lot of people are probably having a lot of problems with shamans because of the evolved nature of them. This deck has so many board clears because the shaman plops out a bunch of minions, like a bunch of low-cost minions, and evolves them or devolves your minion. That's the other thing, is the Mountain Giant can't be devolved. So this is I think this deck probably has a 75% win ratio against evolved shaman. So that's sort of one of the meta decks right now, because there's so many hard removals with this deck that it works really great against sort of those mid-rangey, which is what that shaman deck sort of is, evolve deck. Because, you know, with Siphon Life and like they evolve 3 minions, and you'll see what this game I'm going to play. Enough talk from the orc. Let's watch the Warlock play.
Why do you call?
I always play the Void Walker first to sort of build a buffer. Forgot to attack. It's okay. Too busy trying to rush the games.
Calamos rises. As you command.
So now I've tapped. He hasn't really gained the board by 3. So I can play the Drake next turn with 5 cards in my hand.
Brothers, heed my call. As you command.
I might want to swap this Drake out for the other Drake, which does damage, because that pairs really well with
When Earth moves, empires fall.
the other is a Shadow Flame. I do have Blood Bloom.
This only works on the simple-minded.
Now we have another Drake in our hand. Very controlling. Pretty much when I have this Vile Illusionist out, I'm always tapping. I'm trying to just build up my deck. my cards in my hand as much as I can. So I'm always tapping first to figure out what I got. You can draw a weapon for sure. I don't want her to die if I don't have to, so I'm going to play a taunt minion out. I could play this guy. But we'll just... Oh, I actually have this combo here. And we have Siphon Soul, which is really good. Or Blast Crystal. The Siphon Soul is just really good.
Look behind you.
We really don't want to lose her, so I'm not going to attack her. Usually what these guys do is they play like Volcano or something. Oh, look at that.
Look behind you.
Stone never heals.
A lot of taunts. Nice, you got more damage out of it because I didn't play my taunt. Got pretty lucky.
Out of my jungle! I will enjoy watching you die.
Now, if he evolves again, if he were to evolve again, he would be able to get out of it. Let's Siphon Lord that. Do damage to the enemy hero. 3 damage to all minions.
The end is coming! Nice to meet you. I knew it! Job done. Brothers, heed my call.
Interesting. Not really what we wanted. Taunt. I'm gonna take 4 damage here. Well, we do have another way to destroy him.
Side effects? No. Trust me.
There we go. See, with this deck, you have to play virtually perfect. That's the problem with it, but it can beat almost every deck. Evolve into a charge minion. What is this? Morose. Interesting.
You rang. Done.
That's his second evolve that he used. He did play an element last turn. You have Doom now. Except from really... See, he's like running out of cards.
When Earth moves, empires fall. Job done.
It's at the bottom of the deck.
Jarraxus, Eldar Lord of the Burning Legion!
Side effects?
Out of my jungle!
Pick the biggest minion there.
Job's done.
Still worried about getting just zapped with something like Calamos or something, but he's already played it. You do damage to the hero. There we go. Give me some HP. Kind of gets me out of the danger zone a little bit.
You face Jarraxus, Eldar Lord of the Burning Legion! Away! It's running out of cards!
There we go. Alexstrasza. I think he's only used, let's see, we have the Violet Illusionist, which is the last card. Playing, he's dropping them all.
I'm out of cards!
Let's see here.
Truth is my shield.
Job's done.
Kill off one of my Infernals. Not a big deal. Now I wonder if I play Violet Illusionist that I'm behind this one guy. Who's a Hex. He's trying, he's going for it.
I bring life.
Flames consume you!
This only works on the simple-minded.
I will know.
Now I wonder if I'm going to take damage from this. This is lethal, I think, too, by the way.
Unbelievable! You win this one.
So that's kind of how you would win most games. You're kind of just stressing, you're pulling by the hair of your teeth the entire game until you wear someone down with Jarraxus' hero power.